This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good looking friends. Merry Christmas. I hope everyone had a peaceful and blessed day. I am so grateful to have you here. Join me on this channel. And today we're going to talk about the King's Speech. Let's first kick off this video talking about the royals walking to church today. Is it just me, or does it seem really bizarre that the royals are not walking in any type of particular order, especially with each other's families? Like when you see them walking, you don't see Edward with Sophie. Sophie's like in the back. You have Catherine and Prince William sort of in the middle, but then Eugenie is like right up in the front. And all of them are walking pretty clustered together. To me, I find that this year's walk to church seems a little bit off, but let me know what you think in the comments about this. And then the other thing that I noticed was after church, when they were all walking out, we only got a chance to see the Waleses family go and greet people that were waiting outside. Now, I don't know if that was intentional, but I haven't been able to find other feeds where we were seeing the king and the other members of the royal family go and greet people that were waiting outside. It was really just focused on the Waleses and then ultimately just Catherine for the rest of the time that they were out there greeting people. So I thought that that was a little bit weird. Also, what I found really strange is if you notice the little girl that was with Princess Charlotte, I think that's Zara's daughter, went to walk with Princess Charlotte. And I don't know if, Catherine said something, but you could see Charlotte immediately just fall in line and just completely move aside, leaving the little girl there. So I'm not really sure if that was a unspoken understanding that they have to go off and do their own thing. I mean, it's not a big deal, but we know how the royals like to keep order, and, this looked a little bit out of order. Just my opinion. Okay, so let's move into the meat of this video, which is talking about the King's Speech today, which was pre-recorded at Westminster Abbey. So we're going to go through some of it because I want to point out a couple of things that maybe some people are not recognizing or picking up on. But overall, this was a political speech. I've given the king the benefit of the doubt over the last several years, but this time I think now it's becoming very clear that these speeches that are being made are very much in line with what the Labour government is doing. And you'll see why in a second. So Charles begins by saying a few weeks ago, he and the Queen went to go make a state visit to the Vatican where they prayed with Pope Leo in a historic moment of spiritual unity. So he kicks off with this word unity. And it starts together. We celebrated the Jubilee theme, Pilgrims of Hope.
Together we celebrated the Jubilee theme, Pilgrims of Hope. Pilgrimage is a word less used today, but it has particular significance for our modern world.
So when Charles is talking about this word pilgrimage, in today's world, for many, like myself, you think of it as like some type of journey or trek to a place where it will be transformative or spiritual, or even both. And just like the three wise men who made this pilgrimage to this manger for the birth of Jesus, he is looking at today's modern world with what's going on in a similar fashion, which I find a bit concerning, considering when I hear pilgrimage, I'm thinking about all these boats making this journey over to the United Kingdom to go ahead and rape and pillage the country. As it continues on, it does appear that Charles wants all of this integration and harmony or unity with these cultures that completely clash with British values. And given that Christianity is a forgiving, peaceful, and compassionate religion, I find that there's a little bit of manipulation that's going on here with this speech that I don't like. In pertaining to pilgrimage, Charles goes on to say it's about journeying forward into the future while also journeying back to remember the past and learn from its lessons. We did this during the summer as we celebrated the 80th anniversaries of VE and VJ Day.
The end of the Second World War is now remembered by fewer and fewer of us as the years pass. but the courage and sacrifice of our servicemen and women, and the way communities came together in the face of such great challenge, carry a timeless message for us all. These are the values which have shaped our country and the Commonwealth.
And this is where Charles has missed the mark, because essentially he is telling everyone and showing everyone a demographic that is not representative of what the demographic looks like today. Communities are more divided than ever in the UK because you have foreigners that have come into the country who refuse to assimilate and work together. So there isn't any kind of unity nor any type of loyalty that once was there with the native British people. And he missed the mark here in understanding that. But he is talking to the Christians because the land was founded by Christians who shared those values. Those values are not being respected today.
As we hear of division, both at home and abroad, they are the values of which we must never lose sight.
Yeah, but those values are not even being respected by the leaders of the country. So how can you tell a Christian population that they need to hold on to the British values while you have these animals coming in and taking advantage of the kindness of the Christian population?
For instance, it is impossible not to be deeply moved by the ages of the fallen, as the gravestones in our war cemeteries remind us. The young people who fought and helped save us from defeat in both world wars were often only 18, 19, or 20 years of age.
And right here, I get the vibe, or at least the underlying message, that Charles is communicating to the white British population who are Christian that the UK is going to be going to war. Given the fact that King Charles makes it a point to kick this message off, talking about World War I and World War II and how the communities had come together in face of such great challenge, which also is referencing to pretty much the same challenges that we're having today, the message coming from their acts of heroism is timeless, right? And then also then talking about with all this division and so forth, they can't lose sight of that passion that they had to fight for their country. Yeah, I also think that it was very strategic and specific to mention the ages of the youth that went to fight for this country during both wars and how respected they were for fighting to save from defeat, which essentially is saying, we're sending your sons and daughters, because that's what the colonel said a few weeks back, piggybacking off of Labour's message.
Journeying is a constant theme of the Christmas story. The Holy Family made a journey to Bethlehem and arrived homeless without proper shelter.
And this right here is a metaphor for the illegal migration coming into the UK, and the Christians need to just accept it because remember, this is part of your faith. You understand what journeying means. Okay, allow these people to come in without any clothes, out any food, out any shelter, and come together as a community to take care of them. That's what he's saying here. It's a metaphor.
The wise men made a pilgrimage from the east to worship at the cradle of Christ, and the shepherds journeyed from field to town in search of Jesus, the Savior of the world. In each case, they journeyed with others.
And you see how they cleverly clip this together. So just when they talk about the saviors, they then clip to Prince William and King George, who are the future of the monarchy, establishing that the monarchy is in it for the long haul, but also talking about other people coming together, which includes this whole diversity DEI shit. There you see Prince William tapping the back of a black woman, showing, hey, look how, inclusive we are.
And relied on the companionship and kindness of others.
So far in this video, no Muslims are included. One would think that if you wanted the population to accept the Islamist class that has come in to take over, you would include some propaganda showing that they were a part of doing community things with the rest of the white folk. But in this video, it's so obvious that they know that The white British native people don't want to hear it. They don't want to see it because they know how terrible it has been. So this whole propaganda that we're seeing of the royals doing all the great work that they do, but completely eliminating the Islamist class is a great indicator that they're trying to sell the world that this is what the UK looks like. You know, everything that you're hearing is not true. Rapes of little girls? What? No, not the UK.
Through physical and mental challenge, they found an inner strength. To this day, in times of uncertainty, these ways of living are treasured by all the great faiths and provide us with deep wells of hope, of resilience in the face of adversity.
Recognize that leftist term. How many times have we heard Prince Harry use that same exact phrase with the veterans at Invictus? A lot, right?
Peace through forgiveness. Simply getting to know our neighbors, and by showing respect to one another, creating new friendships.
I want you to listen to these words again very closely. King Charles says, "To this day, in times of uncertainty, these ways of living are treasured by all the great faiths and provide us with deep wells of hope, of resilience in the face of adversity, peace through forgiveness, simply getting to know our neighbors, and by showing respect to one another, creating new friendships," meaning you all got to get along. Charles knows that there's division as well as problems in the UK. And he expects that the white Christians will listen and be submissive and subservient to the things that he's saying. So, yeah, you know what? You need to be resilient in the face of adversity. So if they are raping your children as well as your women, you just need to tolerate it and be forgiving and have compassion for these people. Eventually, there will be peace. Like, I don't necessarily know if he really believes that, but I think he thinks that the Christian population are so obedient that the message will resonate and they will listen.
In this, with the great diversity of our communities, we can find the strength to ensure that right triumphs over wrong.
You know, I think Charles is talking to the wrong audience. Can you imagine him saying this during Ramadan?
It seems to me that we need to cherish the values of compassion and reconciliation, the way our Lord lived and died.
You see, here's the thing. Islam does not recognize Jesus as their Lord and Savior. They recognize him just as a prophet.
This year, I've heard so many examples of this, both here and abroad. These stories of the triumph of courage over adversity give me hope.
Now, what's interesting here is this is the trip with Princess Anne in Ukraine. These are Ukrainian soldiers that are injured, that are rehabilitating. I almost feel like this was a little manipulative because if you weren't paying attention to the royals this year and did not know that Princess Anne went to Ukraine right after Prince Harry, then you wouldn't have caught that Princess Anne was visiting the Ukraine injured veterans. You can see there is a Ukraine flag hanging in the background. I will bet that the majority of British people that saw this Christmas message today didn't think twice and probably assumed that Princess Anne was doing her royal duties in the UK.
From our venerable military veterans?
Yeah, I find this a bit deceptive because just as Charles is saying, from our venerable military veterans, you're assuming he's talking about the British military. But no, just as he's saying that, there is a shot of Princess Anne with Ukrainian veterans. Yeah, I had to double check this to make sure that I wasn't inaccurate in stating that this is deceptive.
To selfless humanitarian workers in this century's most dangerous conflict zones.
So right after Charles says, from our venerable military veterans to selfless humanitarian workers in this century's most dangerous conflict zones. So we could assume that he's talking about Ukraine, Or we could assume that he's talking about Gaza, because right after he says this, it immediately cuts to this clip of Charles in the UK visiting that synagogue where 2 Jewish people were murdered by an Islamist terrorist. And then it switches over to showing clips of Bondi Beach where another terrorist attack had happened. So is he saying that these are now conflict zones? I'm confused.
To the ways in which individuals and communities display spontaneous bravery, instinctively placing themselves in harm's way to defend others.
Well, yeah, Bondi Beach, reports of the police not firing or doing anything and standing down while you had these gunmen running around. Of course, the civilians are going to take matters into their own hands. Like, what do you expect people to do? And I think what Charles says next is the most gaslighting part of this whole entire Christmas speech.
As I meet people of different faiths, I find it enormously encouraging to hear how much we have in common.
You know, I find this part very insulting to Christians. Charles just got done saying, as I meet people of different faiths, I find it enormously encouraging to hear how much we have in common. Like, I want to know, why would you include this particular event in this speech when it has nothing to do with Christianity? You do realize that this was at the Muslim-Jewish Reconciliation Accords. And for those that don't know what this is, it was a recent interfaith agreement made by senior Muslim and Jewish religious leaders in the UK. I don't understand why people are not mad at this. Charles is supposed to be the head of the church, defender of the faith. Christians are being attacked, they're being persecuted, their place of worship being desecrated, but nobody is speaking up about all the hate that Christians are facing. Instead, they go ahead and sign an accord to make an effort to protect the Jewish and Muslim communities, but completely excluding the Christian community. Now, the purpose of this accord for Jewish and Muslim communities is seeking to build ongoing dialogue and cooperation to deepen mutual respect and establish practical ways to work together on shared concerns, such as combating discrimination, social isolation, and supporting vulnerable people while acknowledging and respecting those differences. But don't worry about the Christians. We'll humiliate them every single chance that we get. Because essentially, this is exactly what Charles is doing. Like, he couldn't leave this interfaith bullshit out for one day and just give Christianity its glory? No. Yeah, and it took Charles all the way to the end of this message to then actually talk about the real purpose of Christmas, in which he says it was a pilgrimage with a purpose, heralded by angels that there should be peace on earth. That prayer for peace and reconciliation, for doing to others as we would have them do to us. So, Charles, my question to you is, at what point do Christians say, I've had enough, especially when they are treating people the way that they want to be treated, but not getting that treatment? Like, I don't think raping children is okay.
That prayer for peace and reconciliation, for doing to others as we would have them do to us, which rang out over the fields near Bethlehem more than 2,000 years ago, still reverberates from there and around the world today. It is a prayer for our times and our communities too.
No, Charles, the Christian community is not the problem, nor is it the people that have come in that have assimilated and are contributing back to society. The problem is the broken government, as well as all of these unvetted foreigners who do not share these so-called values that you kicked off this speech with.
With these words and my whole heart, I wish you all a most peaceful and very happy Christmas.
And there you have it, folks. My overall sentiment of this is that I felt it was very disingenuous. And I think King Charles took advantage of Christmas to exploit the goodness and kindness of the religion to make the native Brits still have loyalty to king and country, to continue to keep paying their taxes, as well as giving up their sons and daughters to go fight in a never-ending war. It's definitely not an accident that at the end of this message, the king has a Ukrainian choir singing Carol of the Bells. I mean, if that doesn't tell you how biased the royal family is towards Ukraine, I don't know what else is. It does appear that King Charles wants this war. If indeed Charles really wanted the so-called peace on earth, then of the many times that they were close to signing a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, it would have been done by now. Don't you think? So, make what you want of this, but I'll tell you this much. I don't think people are buying it. Certainly not the military, who have expressed online, many of them, that they don't feel like they should be going off and fighting a war for a country that doesn't give a shit about them.
Right, I just want to give a couple of minutes to talk about something quickly here. As a former British Army veteran who's proud to have served this country, I've got a few things to say to Sir Richard Knighton. With all due respect, no. We're not sending our sons and daughters off to prepare for some war with Russia, all right? Russia isn't invading our islands tomorrow. The real danger to British families is right here at home, right? Uncontrolled immigration that's overwhelmed our borders, with hundreds of thousands arriving unchecked. We're talking about cases where illegal migrants, right, and asylum seekers have been convicted of horrific crimes, raping children, sexually assaulting girls as young as 14, even murdering innocent people on our streets, right? The working class blokes like me aren't leaving our wives and kids behind to fight abroad while our communities deal with this. We've seen the headlines: failed asylum seekers and small boat arrivals committing rape, grooming, stabbing attacks, and worse, right? Our families need protection here first. Proper border controls, swift deportations for foreign criminals, and resources focused on keeping British streets safe. Fix the mess at home, secure our borders, and protect our women and children properly, right? Then maybe we'll talk about deterrence overseas. Now, I've got to be honest, you lot, right? I've spoken to a handful of people already, right? Including pals that I served in the military with, right? And I've got their responses, right? One of them being from my ex-battery sergeant major, right? Another one being from another pal that I served in regiment with. And also I've got one of my best mates, who I've known since I was 18, who's ex-French Foreign Legion, right? I want you to watch these clips because the responses says it all, right? Take a look at these clips, please, and then rethink it.
Hi, my name is Mark. I served 26 years in the British Army, and I was recently posed a question by Sean: would I go to war for Keir Starmer? The answer is quite simply no. I have no loyalty to the Labour government whatsoever. They have hung us out to dry, both veterans and what they're doing now. Maybe, just maybe, all these illegal immigrants that are coming ashore and would desperately want to be in the UK, maybe they'll stand up and fight for us. How about sending them? Let's test their credentials and see if they're worthwhile British citizens.
Alright, my name's Josh Edwards. Just making this video for Sean, who I served with in the British Army, 5 Battery, Royal Artillery, Highland Gunners. I served 6.5 years, done tours in Afghanistan, and I'd just like to say I agree with Sean and what he's saying, as in I don't understand why we need to go and fight a war abroad now, where we have issues in this country. We don't want to leave our wife, our kids in danger in this country, and there's big issues going on that needs to be dealt with. So that's my opinion. I believe that we should not be going abroad and fighting wars in other countries when we have major issues ongoing in this country.
Evening all. I've been asked to do a quick video for my mate Sean there about the possible war in Russia for Keir Starmer. Now, first thing I ask anyone when they ask me a favour is, what have you done for me? I think that's a question that any man should ask himself when these political bastards in their suits with all their money in their ivory towers ask you to risk their life. First thing you should ask is, what have you done for me? I pay taxes My whole life. 20% of my wages go to the government. Everything I buy is taxed. The fuel in my car, taxed. The car I bought, taxed. The wages I earn, taxed. What happens when I die? Taxed. I want to give anything to my family when I've gone, taxed. And what do you get when you retire? A measly pension that you can barely get by on. They won't even put you in a home. You give, they take, and you get nothing. And then they want to risk their lives for some phony war that you don't even know the details about. Meanwhile, immigrants are plaguing your country, attacking your women, attacking your children, and you're going to go abroad for Keir Starmer, a man that was voted with Jimmy Savile. Network of all the same people.
Definitely let me know your thoughts below. What did you think about this speech? As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Such a fraud.